which means I have to contact the agency twice a year, find out what you're doing to remediate the issues. And a lot of those issues that we're finding are around advanced authentication, which is why when Lori contacted me, I was like, oh yes, get me in front of this group. I would love to proactively talk to you about this before the FBI is talking about this. Okay, so we'll talk about the CJIS security policy. We'll just kind of do like a broad high-level thing before we get into advanced authentication. So the CJIS security policy was developed by the FBI CJIS division, and the FBI hates this slide because they have an advisory board that works on all this stuff, and it was actually the advisory board that helped create the CJIS security policy. So I have to change that. But it's enforced by CBI. It sets the standards for use and protection of criminal justice information. Use is more in 28 CFR Part 20, although some of that is in Section 4, Chapter 4 of the CJIS security policy. Where can you find it? You can just Google it. The link is on there. And the reason you have to follow it, and we get this a lot, usually from command staff, after we're bugging you to fix something very expensive like encryption or two-factor authentication. They go, well, why do we have to do this? Colorado's a home rule state. Why is the state telling us what to do? And the reason we are is because every one of you, if you've got access to CJIS, you've signed a user agreement with CBI, or your agency chief has, that says, I'm going to follow all these rules, and one of those rules is the CJIS security policy. So it's a condition of accessing CJIS. So, because I said so, is basically our strongest argument. Although, the other piece, and it was on the other slide, is that this also protects your sensitive information. So, if you're going to do this for your criminal justice information, your CJI, you might as well do it for your public safety information, for anything you have that's sensitive. Patrick Woods, the information security officer from Missouri, did a few presentations after the cyber attacks by Anonymous during the Ferguson protest. And one of the things that Anonymous was going after was things like work schedules, employee calendars, email, stuff like that. Because what they were trying to do is disrupt the operations of the Missouri Highway Patrol, not necessarily get into CJIS and find out what someone's criminal history is. But sanctions for noncompliance. So what if you're not there on CJIS policy? We don't have advanced authentication, we don't have encryption, or we just maybe as an agency we either can't afford it or we still think it's that important. Well, this is a condition of access. So if your agency is not able to comply, what we do is we try to work with the agency, do everything we can to help give any sort of operational information, give guidance, help your command level staff understand the reason this is important. But through that process, we also can sanction the agency, and the ultimate sanction would be we take away your CJIS and NCSC access. As you can imagine, that's a huge public safety risk for any local agency, so it's not something we're going to do because you didn't have two-factor authentication yesterday, and well, it's today, and you didn't get it done, so we're shutting you off. That's not going to happen. The way we would handle something like that is we have a structured sanctions process in the state. It's a new process. CJIS is governed by an advisory board, and that advisory board just approved a sanctions process for us. We're going to be sending letters out to the agencies later this year to show you the structure of that sanctions process. But what it does is, if there are significant findings at the agency, we'll present those to our board of executive directors, which is chiefs and sheriffs, and they'll tell us whether we need to keep just asking you for updates. Just keep writing in letters, or do we need to go to the next step, which is we don't allow you to bring any more users on the system. We don't allow you to bring an interface on the system. We don't allow you to get any more terminals. Or are we finally at the point where we have to say enough is enough and take down your access?
Have you ever taken anyone's access away?
Yes, for 45 minutes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. We took access away from one agency for one file for security violation, and it lasted about 45 minutes. That, of course, went straight to the top, and both CDI and the other agency agreed that they were going to resolve the policy issue if access was restored.
The likelihood is you're going to work with us to fix whatever problems there are. It's not like we have to fix certain things like right away. We're working on it. We'll get to it. We might not get to it tomorrow, but maybe it's a plan that's a bigger investment.
Yeah. As much as we need to ensure your compliance, we also want to protect your access. We want to make sure that you have the system available to keep your officers and your citizens safe. So this is not something that we take lightly. That's why we bring it to our advisory board, our executive directors, to say, do we shut this agency off or not? Because DeRosa shouldn't be making that decision. It should be the CBI director and leadership from other agencies have perspective on the situation your agency might be in. Usually, if I talk too long on a slide, I find that I go to the next one. I've already covered all that stuff. So let's see how it is. Okay. With the security policy, they try to be technology agnostic, where they're not endorsing one certain technology. So there's not a lot of information on how to meet CJIS policy. It's more, if this is what you're doing, here are the controls you need in place. If you're mobile computing, here's the authentication standard. If you're not, that doesn't matter. If you're using mobile devices, here's what you need to do. If you're using wireless, here's what you need to do. It's up to you to find technology that meets those standards. We don't really have this problem much anymore, but I used to get calls a lot saying, can I give the CJIS security policy to my vendor? I think most people know it's online now, and there's no question, but every now and then I'll get that still comes up. The CJIS security policy is an unclassified document. Just tell them to Google it, it's up there. If you're doing RFPs, if you're getting a new system, if it's going to contain CJIS information, even if it may contain CJIS information in the future, you might want to address that in your RFPs. We've seen it happen time and again where an agency will contract with a vendor, and then when it comes time to look at CCIC or NCIC information, they discover, oh wait, this is a CJIS system, we have to follow a CJIS policy, and then all of a sudden what they're doing is introducing a very expensive change in the middle of the project. And as you all know, that's going to come with a big price tag. So be proactive about making sure that your vendors understand if you're in a CJIS policy position, if you're talking about a system that needs to be protected by CJIS policy, that they're aware of that as being. Most important part of the CJIS security policy is Chapter 5. That's when we come out and audit, that's what we're looking at. We're going through Chapter 5 of the policy with your agent. There's 13 sections in there. It went from 12 to 13 a couple of years ago when they took all the mobile computing standards and shifted them down to the 13th chapter. Here's what the FBI website looks like with the CJIS security policy. When you pull it up, there's this reader version on screen that's kind of difficult to deal with. Just go to the bottom, the PDF's downloadable. Up at the top, there's a requirements document. This is another PDF, but this is a table of all the shall statements in the policy. So if you're doing something like an RFP or requirements traceability or something like that, this is a nice place to be. Because you can pull this up and it tells you what all the standards are. What this doesn't tell you, though, and I would always refer back to the policy, is this doesn't tell you the nuances around that. Okay, it'll tell me what I need for two-factor authentication, but the conditions for two-factor authentication, when I need it, is in this document. Okay, and this is something that comes up sometimes when we're talking to people that are more from the IT side. Is, wait a minute, what are we talking about when we say CJI? So this is all in Chapter 4 of the CJIS security policy. Restricted files is criminal history and anything that's like criminal history. So if it's a record about something somebody's done in the past, it's probably a restricted file. Non-restricted files are, I don't like the name non-restricted file because they're still restricted, but those are the right now records. They used to be called hot files. They're the things that an officer runs in the car and is going to take action on if they get a hit. And then personally identifiable information is just what it sounds like. It's the things that tell you this is a specific person. The easy way I tell people to think about this is, where did you get the information? If it came from NCIC or CCIC or NLITS or Index, if you got it through CBI somehow, then it's probably CJI, and CJIS security policy applies. Right. Before we get into Chapter 5 here, is there any questions on that overview type stuff? All right. Going the right speed? Anyone overwhelmed or panicked?
Yes, is that a living document? I mean, is it constantly updated and changed? I mean, you made reference to the mobile areas being consolidated. And if it is, how often should we go back?
That's a great question. It's changed about once a year. And the way those changes work is everything goes to the CJIS Advisory Board. There is a Security and Access Subcommittee to that board that looks at any matters related to CJIS security policy. We actually just submitted a paper to them this year about, anyone familiar with the new NIST Special Publication 800-63? We've gotten a lot of questions on that one. It's about authentication. We submitted a paper on that. So the first place that goes is to the Security and Access Subcommittee. They look at it and determine whether they have any policy recommendations for changes to the CJIS security policy. From there, it goes to the working group. So the paper we just submitted was reviewed in October. It'll go to the CJIS working group, which represents all 50 states, all the federal agencies that use NCIC. It'll go there in March. In March, the working groups will vote. A couple months later, in June, the advisory board, which is like the top tier, the executive board of the CJIS APB, they'll vote on it. So any changes will take 6 months just to get approved through the board. Then they have to go through FBI administration, including the FBI director. So to just prescribe a change and get it approved takes about a year. And then because of the iterative process of making changes to the security policy, it takes roughly 2 years for a change to go from a recommendation to the Security and Access Subcommittee to something in a new version of the CJIS security policy. Once it becomes a new version, so let's say, what are we on now, 5.6? So let's say something comes out in 5.7 that's significantly new. That item, there'll be, that's a new policy recommendation. For the next 3 years, what they'll do is what they call a zero-cycle audit on that requirement, which means they're going to audit on it right away, and we're going to audit on it right away. But if you're missing that requirement, you have 3 years to get compliant. So they'll just tell you you're out of compliance, but they're not going to do anything. They're not going to sanction the agency on it, or FBI sanctions the state. They're not going to sanction the state on it for that 3-year period. And then once the 3 years is over, then the next audit cycle is real requirement. You got to follow it. So it is sort of a long process, and it is an iterative document. So it does. We do see a new document every year.
Thank you.
The differences between 5.5 and 5.6 were pretty subtle. Just mostly some clarifications on things. There wasn't anything that was real significant policy change. Okay. So we're going to go right into access control here. There's 4 other sections before this that talk about agreements and security awareness training and other things that, if you have questions on those things, you can always email me. My email address is on the CBI website, and we'll talk about resources, available resources at the end of this. But unsuccessful login attempts, no more than 5 unsuccessful attempts, then a 10-minute account lock. As some of your officers probably know, we don't have the technology in OpenFox for a 10-minute account lock. So when you script your password 5 times in OpenFox, you're locked out and you got to call CBI. And we have to manually reset you. The system use notification comes up a lot. All of you, I think, have OpenFox access, and when an officer, an operator logs in, they get a window that comes up, says the system's monitored, it's to be used for criminal justice purposes only, and they have to take an action to accept that notification. They have to acknowledge it, they have to manually do it. You know, it's not, there's a yes and a no, and the default is no, so if they just hit enter, they'll get kicked out. You need to do something similar in your system. So if you're working on an RMS or a CAD interface that interfaces with CJIS directly, you need that statement on there that says the system's monitored, unlawful use is prohibited, that they have to actively acknowledge.
Yeah, if the generic login screen for the Windows computer meets that criteria, and the assumption be made that anything that happens behind it, like accessing the RMS, would follow that. So if I have to accept logging into my computer, it says I'm going to only use it for good and not evil.
Yeah.
Can the assumption be made that applications I'm accessing through that same computer follow that same criteria?
Yeah. Take a look at the criteria in 554, and as long as your notification meets that, if that's the notification to get into the system or into the network, then anything they're accessing behind that network is kind of covered by that. They just have to confront and acknowledge this before they get to CJI somewhere.
Okay.
And that, you know, that's a good question, because that's pretty similar to how the two-factor standard is. You just need to do it before you get to the criminal justice information. Okay. Session lock, you can only give them 30 minutes. Different for dispatch centers. I've argued with the FBI about jail terminals. You may have like a jail operations center that works like a comm center for the jail almost, where they're, you know, sending people to different places, things like that. That jail center, as long as that's a secure, physically secure location, needs that standard. So that would be considered a dispatch center, so you don't need session. All right. Remote access has to be specifically authorized by the agency, and the agency is responsible for monitoring that access. So what that means is, if you're allowing people in remotely, you need to designate that you do it and how they do it. What that winds up being is a prohibition on most web applications. And this is, we talk about the difficulties of compliance. Some of the CBI applications are web-based, and we're struggling. Personally owned information systems, bring your own device is just not a good idea.
Could you clarify that last point? Because when we were audited, at first, they didn't like the SSL VPN, and I first thought that might be what you were talking about, but it sounded like you were talking about something else when you were talking about web applications were problematic.
So if I can go to a computer at the library and get to the CJIS application, that's not good.
Okay, that's a good way of putting it.
Does that speak to your mobile question too? Or ish, or
Somewhat.
So, what that means is having a web-based presence on something that's a CJIS application is what they're trying to get rid of. Is make it so if you're getting to a CJIS application, maybe first you're VPNing into your agency network, and that's how you get to it. And the last one, this covers the library too. Publicly accessible computers cannot be used for CJIS data. We used to do training classes at a community college in their computer center, and had to stop doing that. Okay, I Identifiers must be unique. Authentication must occur at the agency. What that means is the difference between using my fingerprint to unlock my iPhone or sending a password to an authentication server that sits in your data. So unlocking the device is not considered authentication. CJIS policy. There's some nuances to that with unlocking certificates and things like that, but if by being able to unlock the device suddenly gets me into a CJIS system, that's a no-no. So what that means is device level authentication does not count as authentication. If that fingerprint reader and fingerprint reader technology is not great, but if the fingerprint is authenticating back at the agency, well, that could be something that counts if you've got a fingerprint reader that's got the quality to do something like that. A badge reader then unlocks it as user-specific certificate. So if I'm using an RFID badge to unlock a certificate on my device that's then used for a second factor of authentication, that's something that's okay. Because what we're doing is not using the unlocking of that folder to get to CJIS information. We're using it to send a certificate back to the agency. Questions on that? Okay. So the primary CJIS authenticator is a password, and we're familiar with the existing password standards. It's got to be something that's impossible to remember. We tell people not to write it down. So the expired password cycling, the use of special characters and numbers, that's what we're looking for. Where sometimes we see issues is there might be an RMS, CAD, JMS, or a file server that contains criminal justice information, but because it's not that login to CCIC, there's a misconception where the agency goes, oh, well, I don't need that password complexity because they're not getting on CCIC. And I have a feeling that a lot of you in this room would go, why would anyone think that? So, yeah, any system that is storing criminal justice information needs to meet this password standard. And then when we talk about authenticators, they explain it in there, and I think this is something that people are much more familiar with now than they were, just say, 2 or 3 years ago. But something password, something R is a biometric, and fingerprint, things like that. Something you have, I have this, I have this. So those are the types of authenticators. PIN numbers. There's a section on PIN numbers in here which kind of gets people spun around a little bit. You can't use a PIN number by itself to get into a CJIS system. As it says in there, for a standard authenticator, that PIN number must meet password requirements, which means it's not really a PIN number, it's a password. If we're using it to unlock a certificate or some sort of a PIN generator app or something like that, there's a different set of standards. And then for using the PIN for local device authentication, it's got to be a minimum of 6 digits. So if all I'm doing with that PIN number is unlocking my phone, and then my CJIS access is through some other system in here that's got other controls on it, I'm fine with just a 6-digit password. Okay. So the advanced authentication is 2 different types of authenticators. So a password in conjunction with a biometric or a token. You can also use risk-based authentication. Has anyone experimented with risk-based authentication? All right.
Yeah, that's kind of,
Yeah.
that's what we're using with the big product. That's how we're using the big product.
Yeah.
Risk-based authentication. These work. What we're using in our last product is kind of
What are you using for criteria on that?
We have a series of challenge questions
Yeah.
that you either have to answer, it does write the criteria for the required information onto the client's computer and also for the login event and stuff like that back onto the authentication program.
Does it, as criteria for as criteria for the risk-based authentication, is it looking at things like the MAC address and the IP address?
Yeah, it is grabbing all of those and making records and rolling on that. There's a point in the system on the client computer that writes that and tracks that and also back on the application.
Yeah, so that's a good example. Anyone who's ever used the LEAP portal, FBI's uses the LEAP portal, their data uses risk-based authentication. If you ever try to log in from somewhere other than the IP address you usually log in at, if you even use a different browser, you'll get additional challenges. So the two-factor authentication, or advanced authentication, standard was introduced in 2011. It affected mobile devices with direct access, and then direct access clarification is a little bit newer than the two-factor authentication standard. And one of the questions that comes up is, when do we need to do that? Actually, 2011, so it became an auditable standard in 2014. So those agencies that had to endure our FBI audit in 2015 know this, because when they came out in 2015, they were looking at advanced authentication.
So direct access, meaning that if you're accessing CJIS on your phone, that's when that is affected.
We'll get there.
Okay.
Mobile data computers, MDCs, that are in the patrol vehicle. That patrol vehicle is a physically secure location pursuant to CJIS policy. Yeah.
But I thought that we were having to do that even with police vehicles at this point, that we were having to put two-factor authentication in on police vehicles.
The original in 5.0, it said that, and then it was, I think, version 5.3 where they backed off and said, you know what, we're just going to keep the standard where police vehicles are physically secure.
But for a while, it was an exception. Is that a standard
It wasn't
now?
an exception.
Okay.
It's now a standard. They got rid of the sunset.
So we do not need two-factor authentication on the mobile in the car.
Yeah, but it's complicated. We'll get there.
Okay, remove the MDC from the car, take it elsewhere.
Exactly.
Okay.
Hold on, we didn't quite hear that. What was it?
If they remove that MDC from the car,
Which
if
they
I
do.
take my computer out of the car and go into Starbucks or my house, now I need to.
Or the hospital.
Or the hospital.
That's where they go.
That's, remove that.
All right.
So it doesn't.
So with an agency-issued smartphone, tablet, or iPad, and we'll talk about MDM, MDM can be used as a compensating control, and they've sort of put this temporary language around that, like they did with the exception for police vehicles. So that may change at some point. I think they're holding on that, knowing that the technology for two-factor authentication on mobile devices is not where it's at on full operating system Windows. Okay, so this will touch on your question a little bit. Slide to the next one. Direct and indirect access. Direct access means I can run a new query. I can put your name in there and I can run you. Indirect access means I have access to stuff that somebody else probably already ran and is storing something. So a report, a static report, a Word document, maybe we made a PDF of the criminal history. Maybe we're just looking at a catalog. Those things don't require two-factor authentication. But if I can access any of these through that system I logged into, now I need two-factor. So So maybe all I need is a CAD log, but that CAD has a CJIS interface. I'm not here, I'm here now. So it doesn't matter what your intention is, it matters what you have access to. Questions on that one? All right, here we go. Oh, my heading's wrong on that. So this is a physically secure location versus not a physically secure location. So if I'm in the police station, if I'm in an enclosed police vehicle, I don't need two-factor. If I'm somewhere else, or an unenclosed police vehicle, I used to have a Paul Blart picture up here, but I kept getting hassled because they're like, he's not a cop. Security guards have access to CJIS? All right, I'll take that off. So these are not physically secure locations, including this one. And this, what if I've got a wireless card in my cuff book? Do I really know that that's here? That's probably here. I don't know where that thing is, I just know it's coming. So that's where we go, there's an exception for patrol vehicles, but wait a minute, is it really an exception? And if I tell my officer, if you're sitting in the patrol vehicle, you don't need it, but if you're outside it, then you do, how am I gonna enforce that? And it's probably easier to just go, you know what, every time you log in, you need two-factor. All right, so advanced authentication solutions, there's a few different things. Again, it doesn't matter to us what you use, as long as it's a second separate factor, communicates out of band, and it authenticates at the agency. So if I'm sending a text message, I shouldn't be sending a text message through the network to this phone. It should be just a separate SMS message that goes to that phone.
Does that phone need to be agency issued to get a text message for a second factor? So it has to be an agent.
Oh, wait, no, it doesn't. I'm sorry.
Okay.
No, it doesn't. So just for the PIN number, like all they're getting is that second factor, that PIN number, that's fine.
Okay.
So using their own device is fine on that. What we've seen from agencies where they're having trouble with it, is the problem they're having is that if I tell somebody, you've got to use your personal phone for this, that person gets a little upset. So what we've been suggesting to agencies, what you might want to do is come up with something else, maybe bingo cards or something like this for those people that don't want to use their phone. Because I have a feeling that most people, if you tell them they have to use their personal phone, they'll get mad. If you give it to them as an option, they'll probably be happy to use it. Yeah, it's just a little printed card that has like 10 PIN numbers that expire, and I don't think that's used too much.
And they're not changing that policy of this having to be an issued device or that we can use this as a second factor?
Not yet. I can't remember if it's, one of the new NIST standards, I can't remember if it's 863 or 853, which is just in draft form. One of them is kind of questioning the quality of SMS or PIN generation.
I think they backed off of that in this as well.
Yeah.
I thought they backed off of that.
Yeah.
No, it's 863, and they just codified it.
So it is a standard now?
Yeah, it is a standard, SMS and any phone call, voice over POTS, networks.
So
If you're currently deploying in a CJIS environment, you ask me straight eyes, so you probably still do it, but there's kind of a new regime in the security sub-council now that's like reverting back to the network. So that is your authoritative decision maker now. And usually it's 2 to 3 years before you have to do something. So it's not in there now, but in here it did just clarify saying SMS is not permitted for access to federal insurance. That hasn't slowed down.
We'll talk about
And
that.
that's still in draft, or that's actually,
Yeah,
it's passed.
we'll talk about that standard a little bit at the end. Just know that right now, authentication is not tied to any NIST standards.
Okay.
The only NIST standard referenced in the security policy is 5140-2 being NIST certified.
policy and send an SMS to that same device?
Something in the policy on that, I'm probably gonna have to get back to you on that one. Take a look at it.
Sounds like if someone acquired the phone, that you're just giving them a...
Yeah, I think it has to come on a separate device, but, I gotta look to be sure. I'll have to follow up with you on that.
To make sure we, so say we assign our phones, we give everybody phones, and we're managing it through our MDM, no real other authentication is going on with that phone, we can still use it as a something we have, right? Okay.
So, when we're talking about advanced authentication, or really the whole security policy, just know where your criminal justice information lives. There's some examples of what we see. A lot of people on the IT side hear about physical files and the need to have filing cabinets in secure areas. But also, if you're relying heavily on your RMS or CAD administrator, you might miss your file servers or something like that. Just know where your information lives, and also know how people are getting to it. What are we using? And if we're using something that's mobile, or has the potential to be mobile, let's make sure that we're looking at advanced authentication.
Question real quick on files. So we're gonna go through and transition our home folders to OneDrive. And that's stagnant data, that's not pulling net new. If that migrates up to Office 365 in the government cloud, does that need a second authentication? Does that break a rule or anything along those lines if it's like an RMS document?
So there's a bigger question there about compliance for that vendor, which they're part of our vendor program, Microsoft's part of the vendor program, I'll leave the change there. But make sure that you're checking on that stuff. But if all that's up there is static data, advanced authentication is not required to get there. But bear in mind, again, if you're going through your network to get there, and through that network I have access to this stuff, even if it's not what I'm interested in, you still need that advanced authentication.
Just to clarify, so if we have a document that's moved up in OneDrive that can be accessible, but it's stagnant file, it's not anything net new pulled, it's okay for it to live in OneDrive.
Regular CJIS authentication is fine.
Okay.
I know this is another wormhole, but isn't that required though if it is CJI encryption in place on that static data?
Yeah.
So it would have
Got to be encrypted at rest, encrypted in transit.
Yeah.
Absolutely right. Yeah, it's hard to talk about one of these standards without veering into some of the other ones, especially encryption always touches everything. So the thing we run into that most people run into at the agencies when they look at advanced authentication is, okay, we know our detectives need that. They're down there at the hospital and they're out remotely, they're working for a task force. We know that. Our IT, we know that. Okay, what about our vendor support staff? We've run into this where, well, that's the vendor's business. Well, they're getting into your system and you sign the CJIS user agreement, so it therefore becomes your business. If the vendor's in the CJIS vendor program, if you're having trouble with that, let us know, and we'll talk to them, and we'll also talk to the other agencies that are working with them. Hey, did you know that this vendor's struggling with advanced authentication? Can you help us get them into compliance? So, vendor support staff, if there's someone that you call at night that's fixing stuff in your system, they probably need advanced authentication. Unless it's completely using some sort of an escort or remote escort type thing where they have to request a remote session, you have to monitor that remote session, and you're staying there and monitoring that entire remote session. Then they're virtually escorted. All right. So when do vendor support staff need AA? If they can VPN by themselves, if they can query CCIC and NCIC even if it's just for test purposes. Well, all they do is run a query for tests. Well, they're still reaching their system. The vendor has visibility to agency user logins, so if they can see those logins to those authenticators, they have access. And the vendor facility does not meet CJIS security policy standards for physically secure locations. And so the vendor facility needs to meet all the physically secure location standards, plus you need to have that contract in place that says they're complying with CJIS security policy. If that's all not there, then you need advanced authentication for that vendor. For virtual escorting, the standards are all there. Your staff is monitoring, or the vendor cannot access the system without somebody allowing them in. And in this circumstance, a lot of times the vendor's staff are not fingerprinted. No AA is required if the vendor can't access it, or if they're doing everything from physically secure locations. And the way you know that's true is the vendor can't provide support services from outside the facility. You call the guy home, you go, sorry man, you gotta call the office. That's a sign that you might not need advanced authentication for that vendor. You're the agency, so making sure that you're compliant, you probably want to look at this and have that vendor give you evidence to why they would be someplace on this section. And these things are just the violations. You don't have your CJIS security addendums, now we're back in the agreement. The vendor VPN and access details are unknown to the agency. I don't know how they get in, they just get in. Vendors authorized to use an agency user's login credentials, which we find that. Oh, well, he's just doing testing, so we'll just give him the dispatch supervisor's OSN and password. He can go in and use his password. We know this guy, right? Backups are in a non-secure facility. That's just a violation. It doesn't matter if you use advanced authentication or not. If you've got something sitting in county IT and there's no CJIS controls in place, then advanced authentication is going to help you.
Clarify, we couldn't have anybody overseas accessing this data. Like if a contractor overseas cannot access it, period, even if they go through background checks and all that fun stuff.
I'm sorry?
Offshore resources.
Offshore resources
are not allowed, period, correct?
They're wrestling with that with the CJIS security policy right now. Right now, the policy says you have to go through a fingerprint-based background check and all this stuff, which is really worthless if the person lives in India and has never come to the U.S. Right now, that's allowed, but they're working on that. What we recommend is that all your data stays within the United States, so they're within the jurisdiction that can enforce things without FDA. So if it's offshore, it's out of jurisdiction. Yeah.
Under virtual escorting, recently our RMS vendor has started using a new system for remote access. I usually initiate it the first time, but they can install a software agent that allows them to regain access even if I'm not there. So you're telling me I have to tell them, no, they can't do that, they have to call me again, and I have to reinitiate the session, right?
Yeah. Is somebody monitoring that entire session?
Normally I do. I bring it up on my screen, so I've got it, I'm watching what they're doing. And I initiate that session at their request. And then when they're done, I clean up, close out, make sure that remote connection is disconnected. But they have that ability to do that, and they have used it saying, well, I'll just go ahead and get back in, later. Maybe I have to go to lunch or something like that. You're saying, okay, good. That's all I need to know.
Okay. The mobile devices are covered in Chapter 13. I think we all know what a mobile device is. I'm not going to spend too much time on that. I don't know if anyone's using Chromebook. Is anyone using Chromebook? For CJIS access? Okay. MDM software. How many of you have an MDM solution? We're working on it. We're working on it too. Right now, we have no CJIS access for there's a whole list of standards of 5.13. If I put it on here, you would be able to read the slide. But basically, it has to be administered at your agency. That can be delegated to IT through agreements, but it needs to be centrally administered. It needs to enforce configuration restrictions, meaning if I jailbreak my agency phone, it's no longer allowed on the network. It needs to enforce encryption. Anything the user might try to do to circumvent needs to be restricted through MDM. And then also, there's the standard MDM things of I can find the device and I can break the device.
So,
Yeah.
can I go back to that? Can you just talk more about no unauthorized software? We actually just, we've been doing MDM for a couple of years now, but we also did Apple Def, and we standardized on Apples in order to actually really control the device completely. And we had a lot of heartburn in rolling out our new Apples because we were only giving them certain apps that were approved on their Apple, and that really caused a lot of heartburn where, a lot of people are using the phones also for personal devices. So what has been the kind of feedback on that, or how are you handling that?
It's really, you're doing it the right way, even though they're mad. I think that's an information security. If nobody's mad, you're going up. So if you want to allow that, you're just going to have to vet those other apps. Figure out what you can allow that's not going to cross over into what you're using for CJI. What can they use that isn't going to try to track or monitor the data or access?
Yeah. So like for instance, in our media section,
Yeah.
they want to use Twitter and Instagram and Facebook and all these other things on their assigned agency device. And so those are kind of the things that are coming up of, well, that really shouldn't be authorized. There's so many ways to track with that, but it causes a lot of heartburn and that they're not having it, right?
If there's, yeah, I mean that I'm not real familiar with the security between CJIS mobile applications and the non-CJIS, how you would enforce that in MDM. But you probably want to talk to your vendor about that, see if that's something that you can allow. If it's really something that you're seeing a need for, and see if there's a way you can allow it without compromising CJIS security. And what that might do, even if just doing that makes sure that you don't have people trying to jailbreak or hack their phones, then maybe it's worth it. Yeah.
We rely on the containerization of all work data and use the extra authentication to get into that container. Apps are restricted within the container, but we don't restrict apps outside of the container. Is that permitted? Because the way I read that, it wouldn't be permitted.
I think that would still be okay, because you've got that secure container, you're enforcing the boundaries around that.
Correct.
And then you've got enforcement around that that's keeping anything from outside that container from monitoring anything inside.
Correct.
Okay. Yeah, if you can ensure that, it's all good. Yeah, when it gets into things like that, we got to start looking at specific solutions, how you're doing that. There's also some applications. We're looking at one right now for our own mobile use that actually just is browser based and doesn't store any data. How we can work that into that. Again, that's something we're really early on. Do you have a question?
That was primarily what it was, because we have Apple devices. We have a container that's supposedly FISMA compliant and maintains those barriers. I was just wondering if there was certain software that, if we were running it on the phone, would negate the container and make it a problem. Because our users used to have BlackBerries, and that was really a very nice world to be in. We controlled everything. Then they all wanted the iPhones or something like that. And then once they get that, they get used to putting everything that they want on there, whatever game the kids want to play, they're all on that device. And we don't worry about that because we've got that container and we're just acting like we're okay.
I mean, I think you would probably need to talk to the provider a little bit about that, just double check. But as long as you're able to enforce those controls and protect that data with the other stuff you're putting on there, you're okay. And they can't take some of that software and put that inside that container, correct?
No, there's a separation. You can't copy and paste, you can't move data across that boundary. It doesn't keep them from putting it in a Google email or something, but we keep our container, separated.
Yeah, you're probably okay there. The way the policy is written right now, it's sort of, it doesn't address that sort of partitioning within the device. It's sort of, here's the device, here's the stuff you need for the device. So, I'm gonna go back and double check on that, talk to the FBI and see if they've encountered that. We'll probably need something, an article or a blog post. Okay. Compensating controls, if you've got MDM on a limited operating system device, then you're okay for advanced authentication, as long as you've got that MDM solution. And again, this is temporary. So, compensating controls, it says you need to have at least 2 of those, and I think the reason that this doesn't match with the MDM requirement is because compensating controls requirement came first. So when they wrote MDM, they wrote it to be a little more comprehensive. But basically, if you're meeting CJIS standards on MDM, you've got this in place. Because the MDM standard in the previous section actually encompasses more than 2 of those. And so talking about the future, someone said they wanted to know about the future. We talked a little bit about how long the advisory process takes. NIST SP 800-63 is something that we have through our state advisory group. We do have an information security subcommittee in that. And if anyone's interested in joining that, please just email me, and we'll add you to the list. We usually meet about 3 times a year, and we can do that via telephone. Most people that participate do so remotely and discuss these types of issues. So last time we discussed SP 800-63, a lot of people were excited about the relaxation of the password standards and said, let's pass this NCIC. And so we did that, and that was the topic paper that started in October. The upside of 800-63 is it favors the relaxation of passwords. So you can do a longer password. They want to see longer passwords as opposed to a more complex, shorter password. So they don't want you to enforce 8 characters. They say, go out to 64 or something like that. Do a passphrase, but you don't need an exclamation point or a keyboard character or any capital or. The downside is it requires systems to contain a password blacklist. So as part of that standard, it says passwords that are overused, passwords that are easily guessed, you need to prohibit the use of those in the system.
But it doesn't specify a standard of where to get that blacklist from, right?
Exactly, yeah. And that's, I was talking to the FBI, one of their ISO people, and they said that's the rub. That's what they're running into, this saying, we're not sure if we want to do this, because to do this, you got to do this. And to do this, everyone's going to go, okay, FBI, where's our password blacklist? And this is something that probably needs to be developed for all of us, specifically, because Red Rocks might be an overused or easily guessed password in Colorado, but probably not so much in Arkansas. What it does do also is reinforce the need for advanced authentication. We talked about the questioning of whether SMS is really going to continue. At this point, no change. We don't know We don't know how this is gonna change the policy yet, and I'm the kind of person that, I walk out of a movie with my wife, and she had figured out the whole plot in the first 5 minutes, and it was like, whoa, what a surprise. So I'm not good at guessing the future. When will this happen? We talked a little bit about that. It takes about a year for changes to get through the approval process, and then about another year for it to get into a new version of the policy. So we're looking at about 2 years, and then like another 3 years for it to become an enforceable audit standard. So this is slow. This is not fast. It moves at the speed of government. We just don't know. 3 years to move into being a compliance standard. I'm not sure about what other changes we might see in the meantime. I think it's gonna, what drives this is where hackers are successful. The changes we see are gonna be based on what they're presenting in Black Hat, what agencies are encountering. People that are on that security and access subcommittee, Patrick Woods, who has to deal with anonymous Ferguson thing, he's on there. The FBI CJIS division, the California CJIS ISO is on there. So there's some people on there that have a really good grasp of what the risks are and how to best mitigate them. So if this looks like something that's going to be good, even if the FBI is going, well, we're struggling with this, they'll probably tell them, well, you got to find a way to do it. We don't got to do this. And I went way over my time.
That's fine, I think they changed it for you.
But if you have any additional questions, we can talk about those now. Otherwise, you can always email me. We go to the general inbox for security questions. This goes to 4 or 5 people as opposed to just me. So if it's a quickie, urgent question, this might be a better way to go. Otherwise, if you send something to me, and I love policy questions by email. Because chances are, if you're asking, you're not asking because you're curious. You're asking because somebody above you at the agency is questioning something you're telling them they have to do. So this answer is going to have to be related to someone. So by all means, and if you want to call me first, I left my phone number off here. Well, that was convenient of me. Email me if we need to talk on the phone. Tell me, hey, call me. But my desk phone number is 303-239-4299. But I love policy questions by email because it makes it very easy for us to answer by email, and then you've got it documented what CBI has said. And those things really last. I just had one sent to me from 2013 where I answered a question. This is what you're saying. We talked through the policy. That's a good way to go. And then also, we have a few web pages that are now dedicated to CJIS security policy. The Criminal Justice Information Security and Access on the CBI website, which you don't need to bother with all this, just go to the CBI website, go to the drop-downs and you'll find it. And also, we have a blog to handle current events type stuff. Our advisory subcommittee, or IT advisory subcommittee, asked for white papers, and that just wasn't something that we have the time and bandwidth to do. So like anyone else who's just trying to publish cheaply, we went with a blog. But we cover current events on there. It's mostly, so far, it's been focused towards agreements, because I've been getting hit with a lot of questions on that. There's a lot of information on the vendor management program. There's something on, Tommy and I were talking about this a little earlier, about encryption of static files. So if I'm encrypting a Word document, encrypting a folder, what's the standard there? So we have something on there as well. So that's all I have. Is there any other questions? Yes.
Are you guys going to post the slides for this conference somewhere?
Yes. So yes, we're recording all this, we're doing it in chunks, right, Ann? Yes. So it'll be different variations as far as what was presented, and we will post the slides. I'll get with you.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll send them out directly, yeah. Yes, thank you.
Okay.
What's the time frame on two-factor? If I authenticate, start my shift and get done, take my computer in the house to finish it, is there a maximum time?
To log into the system, you need to use two-factor authentication. To unlock, you don't. So basically, once per shift.
But I mean, that's the premise. If I use two-factor, then I can take it into Starbucks, then I'm okay.
Yeah. Yeah, even though you're sitting there with a bunch of people behind you.
I guess the hard part for the front line to go, really? That doesn't make any sense. How is that any more secure?
Because we know you have the computer at the beginning of your shift. If it got stolen, what's logged in? I think the assumption is if you went back to your car and your computer was gone, you would probably tell them.
Hope so.
But, you know, if you've got two-factor and you're only doing it once per shift, that's the problem we have, then that's a great problem to have.
Thank you, Greg. All right, Greg for Ted. Okay, Ted is leaving, now we're having Greg. Greg is going to present Identity Automation and founder of 2FA, and in between, we have more coffee. And so if you're like me, I constantly drinking coffee, so help yourself some more coffee over here. And we will be presenting the presentations for all of us. Okay, Jake's leaving, so catch him now, if you have a question. Thank you. Okay.
2 hours of advanced authentication discussions.
Oh, this is a 6-hour part. Yeah.
I do have 70 slides, so.
Oh, please break them down. Yes, yes. Okay. Okay.
Very good. Hi, everybody. My name's Greg Salyards. I am the founder of 2FA. Thank you for those that are customers and those that are looking at using 2FA. We were acquired last year by a company called Identity Automation out of Houston. There's been lots of emails and information. Most of our customers are finding not reading them that often. So I'm here today to answer any questions. When I do these presentations, I like to give away usually gift cards. I didn't pick them up this morning, so I've got these vouchers. We'll just call them vouchers. If you can't take them, give them away to a school or church, charity, something else. I keep it at $20, so I'm not infringing. I'm not buying you out, hopefully. But I do like to ask some questions initially from the previous session. And vendors, you can try, but I'm not going to pick you. So, can anybody tell me what version of the CJIS security policy is next?
5.7.
There you go. What's next? So 5.7 is next. There you go. You got your $20 voucher. So I'd like to keep this interesting and start off by having the audience think about identity. A lot of times we're talking about compliance and we're doing this because we have to do this. You have to realize that everybody's getting hacked. Equifax hacked, Google hacked. The recent one with Yahoo, one of the biggest ones ever. So as we go through it, think about what makes up your identity, and don't think about security as something that you have to do, but how can we implement security and authentication to make our lives easier? And it is possible. So like I said, I'm Greg Salyards. Talking a little bit about my identity. I'm a husband. I'm a father of 5. I've got a 2-month-old at home now. I'm a son. I'm a brother. I'm a brother-in-law. I'm an uncle. I'm a friend most of the time. I'm a homeowner, so we got a lot of data there. I'm a car owner. I'm a dog owner, got a little schnauzer. I'm a tourist. Think about all the areas that I'm leaving trails of my identity with this. So I'm a patient. One of the things that's interesting with Humana now, you sit in a doctor's chair and you can take a picture and that gives you points towards, so that's my Humana shot. I'm a customer, so lots of different areas where I leave my identity information and trust those vendors to protect my identity. I'm a subscriber to a lot of different things, and nowadays things like Amazon and Google and all the convenient ways that we can acquire goods and services. So that's an exchange. Also a veteran, served on active duty for 11 years. I'm also a joker. I love to dress up on Halloween. This is old Greg, for those of you that know Greg. I was skiing here in Colorado, and somebody asked me if I was a Unabomber. So it's up here at Marnot. So being from Texas, I don't have all the previous ski gear. Previously, I was the founder of 2FA. Sorry about this. Founded 2FA in 2006 with Sean Cuttle. Both of us have transitioned over to Identity Automation. Actually, the whole company did. So all the folks that were previously working with 2FA are now part of Identity Automation. A couple folks have left, lot more game. Today, I'm your presenter. And the list goes on. So I think about it from an agency perspective. You may be a standard user, you may be a systems administrator, you may be an application owner, you may be a supervisor. Lots of different identities that we have both in our personal lives and in our business lives. And that's why we need to start protecting data. And start seeing all the different things that could potentially be exposed in a data breach. And as individuals, we really want to protect our information. There's lots of ways that we can. And as employees, we expect the business to provide us those tools, or a security person within the business. That's the wheel that you kind of like. So a lot of times the information that we have gets stolen. Has anybody here been notified that their data was stolen from either from the Equifax breach, and we're going to provide you some gratuitous protection for the, So, I know that my information was stolen from these places because they notified. They give me some form saying, sorry, you entrusted us to protect your data, and we failed, and now we're going to give you something for free for a year that really has little to no value because we have to. Right? So we'll see this a lot in PCI compliance, or compliance, that's the payment card industry. So if you provide somebody a credit card and they store your data, they have a requirement to notify you in the event that data was compromised. The same thing in healthcare, when you sign into your doctor's office about your HIPAA protection information. What we don't know is where our information wasn't stolen, right? So, or was stolen, but they're not notified. And that happens more often than not. The ones that hit CNN and USA Today are the exceptions. The norm is that you have a breach at your power company, or at your a smaller vendor, a salon that you go to, where you provided all your personal information, they have your credit card information, and they were breached. And they're just not going to reach out. So, for the most part, it's a pretty clear line between what we have in our personal lives as far as our personal identity and what we do in our business lives for our business identity at work. And as individuals, we are expected to protect our own personal property. So there's tools out there that we use to protect it. Maybe a dog, maybe a lock, maybe your alarm. And a lot of folks have their alarms, and they pay for their alarms, but they don't set their alarms. They just feel more comfortable because it's there. But there are tools that you can buy as private citizens to help protect your personal property and information. We are seeing finally a good wave of two-factor applications coming for things like banking information. If you want to do a transfer, they're going to send you a little code. In some cases, there may be an inbound message that comes in and says, please approve this. We're seeing things with Google Authenticator, so if you're using Gmail, you can use Google Authenticator. We're seeing it with Microsoft. But lots of applications nowadays are incorporating stronger forms of authentication right into the application itself. So that's a good thing. So you got to ask, why are we targeted? Why would somebody want to steal 3 billion Yahoo data accounts? Why would somebody want to break into my health record? Key area is credit cards. So credit cards, especially with mag stripes, we still exist here in the United States. There's basic information that can be used primarily to create other cards or to be used online until your account gets compromised and then it gets closed down. But there's a window there that if I'm a waitress or waiter in a restaurant and you give me your card, I can swipe that card on a little mag stripe reader, and I can do that all night during my shift. And then at home, I can dump that information onto the computer and write that information on the gift card. And I can sell that information, I can sell those cards, or I can use those cards. That's probably one of the older areas where credit cards were physically stolen. Now, the folks can go into Neiman Marcus or Home Depot and get hundreds of thousands of records, in some cases millions. And there's a value of that on the dark web. Generally, it's $1.50 when you look at the sale. If it's an American with a black Amex, that could go up to as much as $50 per user record. So there's a good reason why these hackers are targeting certain types of records. So we look at one group about 2 years ago, it was around the Home Depot Neiman Marcus hacks. About 160 million cards were stolen and sold. Right, so they were able to get about $300 million worth of recovery from their hacking events. Right? And so when we start thinking about that, especially in the industry that we're in, about kind of the gates, guns, and guards, We all, of course, would put an RFID reader on our door. We'd all have video monitoring in certain areas to make sure that, physical assets are secured. But things are changing. We look at medical records. The average medical record yields about $1,000 on the market. And there's lots of reasons why folks are going after medical records. And those of you that administer county IT, in some cases city, may have a mental health facility or they have something that has to do with healthcare, and HIPAA falls underneath your requirements. Or when you're dealing with EMS and fire. So those records and access to that information is very important. So the Department of Human Services, Health and Human Services has a wall of shame. Any health organization that has a breach over 500 records needs, or gets posted on that wall of shame. In the last that I checked, there was about 150 million records within the United States, health records that had been breached and stolen. And it's probably doubled that by now because there were some major breaches that occurred last year. So these are the reasons why this information is stolen. A lot of times it's to get health services. Right? I'm going to steal somebody's identity, and then I'm going to go into that doctor's office to get some type of health care service instead of going through the CHIP or Medicaid type system. A lot of times it's to get prescription drugs. If I can become you and I know that you have a oxycodone prescription and I can go and easily figure out a way to get that, that's an easy way for a hacker to gain access to information and the drugs that they want. So putting things into perspective with that $300 million heist, and that's one of many that have occurred over the last few years. The most damaging cash heist in the United States ever, and I say cash in quotes because there was one in Boston that was for artwork, but the most expensive cash heist that ever occurred was for $18 million. To put that in perspective, $300 million just for one hack of folks that were overseas coming in to get credit card data that was sold on the dark web, or compared to somebody that is going to be breaking into a Dunbar truck and getting $18 million. So we have to assume that the shift has occurred. It's a lot safer, it's a lot more lucrative for folks to attack our agencies remotely. When we talk about physically secured location, that's really because it was more cost effective. It wasn't a funded mandate. But the reality is that we have state actors coming in. You have a Ferguson or you have a Sutherland that happens. There's state actors that are coming in and trying to interrupt operations. They're trying to get into our networks. We had a major one down in Texas about 5 years ago where there was a video of a judge beating his handicapped daughter, and a lot of the ethical hackers went and just brought that city down. And it was a huge disaster for the city. It was lights, it was power control systems, a lot of things. So it's not in all cases just to get access to our data, it's to disrupt operations. So as employees, we rely upon the employer, the city, the agency, the county, the state, to provide us some tools. Most of us have HID, physical access cards with physical identities. Some of us may have a password token, whether it's an RSA secure ID or something on a phone for those remote access scenarios. The reality is the world that we're in is that there's anytime, anywhere access, a lot of times from any device. The MDM and the Bring My Own Device discussions always come up in these types of forums, and people expect, especially your command staff, they want to be able to get access to any of their information at any time, from anywhere. And so figuring out a way to say no or to accommodate those types of scenarios are not just because of the policy, but because you're having a supervisor or somebody within your organization that really needs it. So the technology is evolving that there really isn't one silver bullet. For a long time, RSA Secure ID was the one-stop shop for anything remote access. For those who've been in IT for a long time, you use that for your VPNs, your SSL VPNs, your Citrix remote access. It always kind of went to a RSA Secure ID to this type of a token that you push a button on and it shows a 6-digit code, and you put that in. And as IT people, this was a badge of honor for a long time, having something like this meant you were special. Give that to an officer and see what type of experience you have. They are not going to like it. You give it to a detective or somebody that sits on a night shift and you've got a monochrome display with no backlit LED and they don't want it anyway because they don't want any lights in the vehicle. you're going to have a problem. So as IT personnel and supervisors, a lot of times you run into, well, I've got this compliance requirement, but I've got these folks with guns that I'm going to have to satisfy. So there are more choices now, but there isn't a single bullet. So we look at the DoD. You know, the DoD went out with contact smart cards with PKI, called the Common Access Card. A lot of times considered kind of a gold standard for security. You insert the card into the computer, you have a PIN that's only known by the user and the card. But it was pretty much defeated by a foreign state actor that was able to put some malware on that system. Users by nature left the cards in their machines, and it was pretty easy to tell when a 6-digit PIN was entered. It was pretty easy to tell by the malware when the computer wasn't in use. So it's actually really easy to see which data is encrypted. Your encrypted data is usually your data that you're going to want to get access to. So this is a scenario where the government had a very secure solution in place. However, human nature in this case was, I'm just going to leave my card in the reader. If you see military personnel that are out on operations, they'll duct tape their card into the reader because they don't need it for physical access while they're out on operations. They only need it for computer access. So that card stays in the reader all the time. So in this case, it had some exposure to our F-35 fighter jet planes. A lot of us have heard about this hack back in 2010. Some foreign actors actually hacked RSA, not to get into RSA, but to get into Lockheed Martin. Right, so you have done your due diligence, you've signed up, you've got a security vendor, you're working with 2FA, but you don't get hacked first. They come in and they hack us first, figure out how our system's secured, and then they go and they hack you based on information that they found from us. So fairly sophisticated hack, and in RSA, they have a big target. They do about $2 billion in the market on an annual basis. But we're seeing this more and more. We just saw this the other day with Yahoo, and with Equifax. This is Target and Home Depot having to testify before Congress. Right? And as security personnel or folks that are responsible for implementing these and making recommendations, as you make those recommendations, I always recommend to have a CYA file because you'll see that it rolls down to the security guy. In all cases, Equifax, CSO get fired. And it's hard to imagine that the CSO didn't say, we need to have encryption on our system. Right? It probably did, but somebody said, we can't afford that, right? Or that's going to disrupt business operations because of this old application. We saw the same thing in the DoD with the GSA hack years ago where the CIO was like, we've got these antiquated systems that we can't put this new technology on. So I always recommend if you're in a position that you're making recommendations to commanders or other folks and there's cost in question, is just keep that email on file to know that if it ever rolled down to you, that you could say that you made those recommendations. It's very rare that a IT or security or an admin mid-level is going to be going and testifying before Congress, but we are seeing the CIOs, the mayors, the city managers, the folks that are more senior now being fired. So there's lots of different stronger forms of authentication. It really depends on what's right for you. And so it could be something like an RFID card. It could be fingerprint biometrics. It could be using a mobile device. It could be something like the new FIDO tokens or YubiKeys that are coming out. So there's lots of different options as far as the different vendors. There's about 250 vendors around the world right now that provide two-factor authentication solutions. 2FA was one of them, now being part of Identity Automation. We provide authentication solutions at the state level here for DPS, the city, the county of Denver, Westminster, and there's some other ones that we provide. And so we've had a very specific focus on public safety and the advanced authentication, a lot of times for the officer workflows. So the policy is created, I'll say by us, it's not created by the FBI, it's created by state-level ISOs like Ted that were in the room. And they hear you. They hear your pains. We don't have the funds. We only have DL swipes in the vehicles. Can we use that for advanced authentication? Can we use NetMotion unattended mode for advanced authentication? The answer to that question is no. But it was yes for a very long time. So work with Ted and folks to answer your questions and find them to be a great resource. Folks like Jeff Campbell up at the FBI CJIS division, they respond to emails all the time, so usually your answers will come back that day or the next day. So don't be afraid to ask questions unless you know the answer and you're going to get an official response, no. So, next question is, what subparagraph of this CJIS policy is advanced authentication? And, yes, sir.
Oh, I had it written down. Unfortunately, what I have is 5.5.
That's incorrect. Advanced authentication. Anybody recall what subparagraph that was?
5.6.22.
Yes, sir. Good voucher.
Yeah, you're in.
All right, a non-question, a non-specific question, but more for Colorado. So, does anybody know what the city of Pueblo has more of than any other city in the United States?
Chili's?
Chemical what?
Government publication.
There's another city. It does have to do with the military, though. City of Pueblo has more living.
Oh, yeah.
Middle of
Medal of, thank you, Medal of,
They have more living Medal of Honor winners than any other city in the United States. That's a pretty good honor to Pueblo.
Right on.
So, do you want to talk about specific advanced authentication methods? So I've been involved with about 800 deployments of advanced authentication in just about all 50 states. There's one northeastern state that we just haven't sold anything in. And to about 1,400 agencies. So, a lot of different questions. What I like to say is there's one CJIS security policy, there's 50 states, there's 23,000 agencies, and there's about 50 million different opinions on what can be done. The best thing that I recommend is as you're going through your analysis of what you're going to do, put a workflow together, shoot that up to Ted and say, is this going to be okay for when I do my CJIS audit? If he comes back and says no, then you can tweak, what do I need to do to get a yes from you? But don't go out and buy something blindly unless you know absolutely for sure that it's going to be something that's going to be acceptable. So those little workflow documents, officer gets in the vehicle, they click on a credential provider, they tap their RFID badge, they put in their AD password, they get logged in, they open up CAD, or they log in with password and they open up NetMotion and they put in a one-time password from an RSA token. Just say this is what we're going to do, and I get a yes on it. Right? And then that's a lot easier to go back to get the investment or the budget allocation, saying, I've already got approval from the state ISO that this is going to be a compliant solution. Obviously, also test out your solutions. The majority of vendors will allow you to kick the tires and do a try and buy. Make sure it works in your environment before you make an investment, unless you've got a super condensed timeline. A lot of times there's folks that have grants that have to spend it by a certain time, and they just need to spend money. But do your due diligence. I will say OTP tokens, one-time password tokens, are still the #1 most commonly used authenticator for advanced authentication. The primary reason why is that they usually use them in the city and the county for something else, for VPN authentication, and now they have to use them over at public safety, and therefore we're just going to expand what we already have. They send these out, and for some reason they keep on coming back broken. Right, physically broken, right? So it'll be snapped in half, it'll be stepped on, it'll be just disabled where that doesn't happen in IT. So the officers will let you know it'll get lost. I don't have that, how do I get in now? So there are some agencies that are more regimented, that this is just the way that it is, officer, you're going to use this, that's what we're going to use. But there are other options, and a lot of vendors now provide multiple options. So soft tokens, an area where agencies do have a mobile phone, and we're seeing that a lot more, is to have rather than carry around this extra token, they've already got a phone, there's a mobile application on the phone. Mobile application on the phone, we see this with like Google Authenticator, but they open up the mobile application. They can also do it with adding a Touch ID or a PIN just for some added security, and they'll get a nice little PIN number that they can copy and they can add in. So in lieu of carrying around this, and as Ted said, if you have a scenario where you're not paying for their phones or their plans, these tokens are cheap. 2FA sells them for $10. So, or Identity Automation sells them for $10. So you can get these tokens and say, here's your token, use this. I'll also give you a soft token application you can choose, and they'll say, oh, I don't want that token. But if you tell them you have a token on your phone that you have to use, they're going to come back and say, well, you're not paying for my phone, right? Or you didn't buy my phone. So just understand there's just some psychology that you can play there. Offer up the tokens. There's also FIDO tokens. This is one from YubiKey. There's other ones that you can get on Google and from us that are in other vendors that are about $15. The YubiKeys are a little bit more premium priced but better known. The state IoT has a program going on with YubiKey, so you may want to touch base with them if it's something that you're interested in. But something, in this case, this also does physical access. So you can use it at a gas pump, or you can use it for getting into the building. And we're starting to see those as a newer technology, but you can do it for Windows login, you can do it for your VPN authentication, you can do it for like your Netscaler access. But hardware soft tokens, as far as the most prevalently used, yes. As far as what officers like the most, I would say RFID badges, and that's something that we offer. The officer uses a badge to get into the door. It has a picture on it. They know how to tap it. It beeps. It opens up the door. It lets them in. Being able to get into a vehicle, they tap, whether it's on a Panasonic embedded reader, GTAC has it, Dell has it, the small embedded RFID sensor in tablets and laptops. The officer simply taps their card. We recommend an AD password. You can do a 6-digit PIN now in conjunction with it if you wanted to keep it simple. It does need to be changed once a year if it's a 6-digit PIN. But if they're going to need to know their AD password for something else, just have them use their AD password. Those that deployed our technology early on, we had a default, we're default at 4-character PIN, so go back and revisit your policies. If you're still using a 4-character PIN, the CJIS security policy now says 6-digit. So next question, does anybody know what the largest data breach was in the United States? Equifax?
Well,
Actually, not even
Yahoo
close.
was the biggest.
Yes. How many records were exposed?
3 billion. I've already won.
So we look at Equifax. Equifax was like 130 million or 100. It was like 100 million. We look at Yahoo was hacked in like 2013 time. And they didn't come out and expose that they were actually hacked until 2016 after Verizon bought them. And they said, well, yeah, we had 1 billion records that were hacked. 1 billion would be, right? So we're talking 4 times bigger than the United States. And that was a wow. And now we find out it was actually 3 billion, right? So, and this is a publicly traded company, well known, not doing what they should do as far as notifying individuals. So I'll have to have another question. In the city of Denver, there's a street that's considered the longest continuous street in the United States. Okay. Fingerprint biometrics. So Ted touched on this a little bit. So using your phone with a Touch ID to unlock or log into your phone is being authenticated at this device level. It's device level authentication. And you'll hear vendors call it device level authentication when it's not web. But what's happening is that your fingerprint template is stored on this device. It's not going to a server. It's not being relayed back to the agency, right? So there's a challenge there, though, especially in Colorado, where you could have folks that are out in the mountains or out in an area where their wireless card just doesn't connect, right? So having a hybrid solution is important, where they can do a stored device level authentication if it's offline, but if it is online, it is going back to a server. So having some type of agency server or something running in the agency or in an approved cloud-hosted solution is important.
Natalie has joined the conference.
So we're not doing local fingerprint biometrics. And that's important when you're selecting some of your devices. So there's companies like HP that only store their physical templates locally. They don't allow you to store fingerprints outside of their device. Companies like Panasonic do a very good job at adopting standards, and some of the other rugged carriers as well. So if you're in a true kind of rugged environment, you're going to be in good shape. But if you want to apply that same system to a detective that just doesn't want a bigger system, just be aware that there are some vendors that you may have challenges with. So again, test your software, test things out before making a buying decision. Smart cards with PKI is still a fairly prevalent technology where you combine your physical access card with a visual ID, and then you can either insert the card into a reader or tap on a contactless reader and put in a PIN, and the person gets logged in. A lot more secure than RFID or MagStripe or some of the other technologies that use cards, but there's a cost with it. The cards can cost as little as $9. If you go to HID, they're $20 or $25. But there are systems that manage the cards, that manage the certificates, and the certificates have to be user-based certificates. So early on in that 5.0, 5.1, 5.2 period, there was an exception in that if you had an SSL VPN, it was considered advanced authentication for a while. And then the SSL VPN and the VPN players came out with something called device-level certificates. NetMotion calls it unattended mode, where they put a certificate on the device. And so a lot of agencies thought, well, I've got a certificate that's in the advanced authentication area, and it's physically on the device, and officers are logging into that device, that should be considered advanced authentication. And it was through 2014. It is no longer. However, you can issue certificates to user profiles just using a Microsoft CA. And users log in and they put in their PIN for that certificate, and that's considered advanced authentication. But it needs to be a user-based certificate that's managed by the agency and not a device-level certificate. It's an area that we've seen some agencies get in some trouble. So DL swipe, I'll talk about a little bit in that a lot of agencies already have the DL swipe in the vehicle. Officers don't love it, but if you're looking at a low-cost solution, you already have the hardware in place. The officer can take out their state-issued ID, they can swipe their badge, they can enter a PIN, they can log in. Again, officers don't like it, but if you had to have something in place immediately in a short period of time, didn't want to deploy hardware, then yes, that is an acceptable form. Talk a little bit about risk-based authentication. Ted talked about it for Lead Portal. Our solution that we have in 2FA is actually or Identity Automation is actually at Windows Login. So you log in with a username and password. We run a risk-based algorithm during that login process. If there's a risk identified, we'll lock the system. And then the user can authenticate with high security challenge response questions per the policy. What I want to make sure that there's, especially for our deployed users, I want to make sure that they're not just logging on with this. If you go to Windows Login with our products, you click on this tile and you have questions, you answer those questions, there's an option that pops up that says log on. And you say, sure, why not? And you log in. That is not CJIS compliant. Any authentication method that is initiated with question and answers is not going to be considered advanced authentication. So there's another one that's kind of a gotcha that wasn't directly in the policy and it came up before, was something called in-band authentication. So in the days of old, RSA had an RSA soft client that was on the Windows desktop that you could open up this tool that we now have on our phones, and you could get a one-time passcode and you could plug that into your Cisco VPN, you could get logged in. Initially that was called in-band authentication and it wasn't approved because they assumed if you had access to the device, then you could get access to that one-time passcode and you can get logged in. Agencies kind of spoke up and said, well, these mobile devices are a lot harder because we can put MDM on the mobile device, but I have my one-time passcode generator on that mobile device as well. And so the FBI has issued an advisory saying if in-band can't be in the same channel, which means you can't open up your CAD application and have your CAD application pop up a one-time password and you fill that in. But if you were logging into your phone, let's say an MDM container, and you received either a push notification that was just a little like pop-up and you get approved, or you need to open up a one-time password application on your phone and plug that in, that's considered to be compliant with the policy. So there's an advisory, if you have that scenario, talk to Ted there, or you can get onto the FBI CJIS website, and they actually have opinion papers on there that you can find out.
You can still reset your password, right?
You can still reset your password. Correct. But I do want to point out those two things. You can't initiate an advanced authentication with risk-based authentication with username or with question and answers. You have to follow that. Log in with a username and password. Think of like a bank site. I'm logging into Bank of America, username and password. I'm on vacation in Mexico. They see an IP address or geolocation is different, and they ask me, what street were you born on, or what's the street that you first lived on. So we have a lot of scenarios with counties and cities supporting agencies that aren't on their domain. So there's a lot of different options from different vendors for this. You may have authentication at the VPN or SSL VPN layer, so a NetScaler or a NetMotion or Cisco AnyConnect. That's pretty simple, right? In our solution, we have a couple as well. So you have a central server, let's say that's hosted at County A. And then you have client software that's down at City B. City B installs that client software. They're not on your domain, but that software is pointed at your server that's publicly available. So when they tap their card or they swipe their fingerprint, it's actually going to your server that you're hosting. That doesn't need to be on your domain. So we have lots of scenarios with devices, RFID or fingerprint biometrics, where a county hosts the authentication systems because they're providing the access and they have the money to provide for the cost. And they deploy our solution, and then they go to the cities and say, we have this, we're providing you risk-based authentication as a primary, you may not like it, if you want to use RFID or fingerprint biometrics, you can use a different solution, but this is our base offering for advanced authentication, and that does provide domain-level authentication on their side, as well as advanced authentication on your side. We do have another scenario where we either see field training officers in vehicles, so you've got two officers in a single vehicle, or that machine isn't physically on the domain at all, due to county or county PD or county sheriff's department not getting along with the county IT. They say we just have to manage our own MVCs, and you are not going to push out Microsoft patches anymore, so we're just not going to be on your domain. You won that fight, but you kind of lost the war because there's a lot of other things that you generally have to do because of it. So we do have a solution called Shared Workstation, which takes the Windows domain login totally out of the equation. And you can do an auto login, auto launch, auto login of NetMotion or another VPN. Then the user taps a card or swipes a fingerprint or does their advanced authentication of what appears to be a secured screensaver. There's a lot more to it than that, but it does address our solution. We usually log in with a local user, or we have a sheriff, unit ID for the password, and we know we're not compliant with the policy, but that's the only way we can do it. Didn't get too close to the end. Single sign-on is something that's not required or prohibited by the policy, and it's nice to provide this to your officers where they can log in with a card and RFID and then open up CAD, and that password's populated for them and it's changed for them every 90 days, and then they have to open up RMS or monitoring. They usually have a lot of different passwords. So if you can reduce what I call the hate index, right? So you're a contributor to this hate index, and that they want to do their job. You're providing them all these new security tools and requirements that they just start to hate, right? And that hate, it's usually not security. It's your VPNs, it's your antiviruses, it's your complex passwords. If you can figure out a way to reduce that hate index, where you're providing an RFID login and just a 6-digit code, you don't have to remember passwords anymore, your hate index is going to go way down. You'll be in an area where the officers are actually happy about getting this type of technology. So that hate index will go up if you give them a one-time password token. I'll tell you that now. I've tried it, we support it, we just give them a little monochrome token, unless you have to. Also look at deploying more than one technology, not 10. We do have some cities that say, oh, we love all of this. We're going to deploy, fingerprint, RFID, risk-based authentication, one-time password, push authentication. Do the crawl, walk, run. And for officers, they like that you're providing them options, but give them one or two options, or give them 2 or 3 options. So what we see a lot of times is RFID authentication falling back to risk-based authentication or a push authentication on their phone if the primary authenticator isn't there. It also provides you for one-time password to cover that, maybe for OWA, where it's not CJIS compliant, but it's an area where it's not an area that you have to protect through CJIS compliant, but it also makes sense to protect email and publicly shared or public information that you would want to protect. So, how am I doing on time, Becky?
You're doing fine.
So remote access, we're seeing city and county governments, I'll mention Albuquerque and King County. Those of you that have HR portals, especially where employees can go in and change their direct deposit elections, those are becoming the #1 phishing attack at city and county government. What happens is they get an email that comes in that looks like it's from you saying, you need to change your AD password, go to this site. They can find out if you have Lawson or PeopleSoft or Paychex or ADP. They'll click on that site, they'll look at it and say, well, this looks like the site, I'm going to go ahead and change my password. They didn't change their password, they've just given the password to the hacker. And the hacker may sit on that for a couple months until they get a kind of a good amount of passwords from the clear agency. And then on the 29th of the month, at night, they'll go ahead and change everybody's direct deposits to some bank in the Cayman Islands. And the city or the county will go and make the payments, and that payment will go to the bank in the Cayman Islands. The employee comes in angry the next day and says, why didn't you pay me? And you didn't pay me, right? So protecting those is an area that you can go in. There are clear examples where that's happened and continues to happen. So protecting employee portals, HR portals, with some stronger form of authentication is a great business case nowadays. You can build it, you can show that a full payroll for a 2-week pay period is X amount of millions, and advanced authentication to protect these workers is, in the thousands, right? So you've got a very good risk-appropriate investment. So look at compliance as an area where you can do or achieve some of your security goals, not as a stick that you're having to comply with at the end. Do I have any questions? I think I covered the majority. So MFA for Droids and iPhones. So Android and iPhone, obviously, more so with Apple. They're just super proprietary. They're not letting any vendors do anything with Face ID or Touch ID. We can call into their APIs for our applications or say, hey, Apple, do a Touch ID and return back a true false if they succeeded or failed. But we can't go in as vendors and manipulate that login. See what happened in like San Bernardino where they just weren't able to hack into that iPhone until some third party came along and logged out an idea. Once they open up the door a little bit and it's cracked, then it becomes a security risk and there's some privacy concerns. Now, Android, on the other hand, is more of an open standards platform, and so you will see certain vendors like Samsung where they have a fingerprint where vendors like us can make a connection engine. The challenging part, though, is that for vendors like us, we would like to provide a ubiquitous solution. So if I go and create something for Android and I come to you as a business owner and say, here's a solution for your phones, well, they're going to say, well, I've got iPhone and I've got Android, and I'm not going to deploy a solution that's only good for X amount of percentage of my business. So the best thing to do is to do advanced authentication at the MDM level. So Mobile Iron, AirWatch, a lot of the leading vendors support radios. So when you're opening up that MDM container, you can do a one-time password or you can do a push authentication. I've said push authentication a lot. I just make sure folks understand what it is. It is a newer technology, you may have seen it, but the user logs into a VPN or into Windows or into a portal, and rather than a one-time password, they'll get a little notification on their phone, and they swipe it down and they hit approve. It's pretty much instantaneous. It's a lot more frictionless. We provide it. There's a company called Duo that does a good job with it. There's Okta. There's a lot of vendors that are providing push authentication. Workday has an in-band one for it. So push authentication is going to be a lot more accepted by your employees over one-time password because it's a lot less friction. Where they go to log in, they get a push authentication, they swipe down yes, and they get logged in. You get a benefit of knowing when they swipe down and approve because it has the IP address, it has their date, time, it has their geolocation. So there's a lot of cool things that you can do with it. If you're interested in that, I can show that. I'll be around afterwards. So any questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, so actually a question about the push authentication. So, if I'm accessing portal or whatever off my Droid site, and I've got push authentication enabled on that, isn't that still kind of considered income? Is that
only if it's coming from the CAD vendor now. Again, people wanted to use OTP or push on their devices.
Right.
It's only on your device. Push authentication is only on a device, and the FBI loves it.
Okay.
And so in order for them to continue to love it, if you're going to be accessing something on a mobile device, and a lot of CAD vendors and public safety software vendors have mobile apps, so they kind of they twisted the policy there. And so I would say as far as in-band authentication, unless you're logging into your public safety app and it's showing, put this code in, it's really no longer an issue because the reality is it's going to be on the same device. So push authentication does come in the same device, but not the same channel.
Okay.
So if you have an identity automation, a Duo, a semantic VIP, RSA that you go to log into MDM and you get a little notification that comes down on that same device, you swipe down and hit yes, you're logged in, that's going to be
So then quasi-related, but probably not. Can I use that same app, that same push authentication, when I'm logging into my laptop over here and then using that?
Oh, for sure.
So it's the same exact account, same licensing,
Yep.
all the same,
Yep.
all the same.
With our software, we have Windows login, we have a Mac client coming out, we've got RDP, SSH, things like VPN login, NetScaler login. It just depends on where it goes. We support ADFS and we support Radius, so it's generally those entry points to within the organization. But you can use the same exact account. We also have a solution in the other vendors as well that you can have, let's say, 3 IT admins that have the same profile on their phone. Let's say TriTech is coming in from San Diego and they say, okay, Bob, I'm going to log into your CAD right now. And you say, okay, and the 3 admins get a notification saying, Bob's account is trying to log in. Bob doesn't have a phone or a RFID or a token, but one of your admins approved it, that's going to be considered CJIS compliant as well. The user's doing the username and password, and then the city or the county is doing the approval with a device that's on premises. I can walk you through that as well.
Yeah.
There's just some creative ways. There used to be a fire call lockup where John from TriTech would call up and say, hey, I need to log in, and you'd go, okay, I got your token here, I'm going to give you your token over the phone. That's just one way that you could provide non-digitally exported access to your organization.
Can you clarify something for me? So we're tackling PCI and CJIS with multi-factor authentication. Is PCI more stringent? Okay.
PCI is more stringent but more specific. PCI is going to point you back more to 863. So PCI and NERC SIT, so counties that have old power systems need to follow that. But PCI is going to be more prescriptive and say this is what you have to do. Where CJIS, again, it's created by your community. They balance between security and economics. So PCI just looks at it saying this is what the industry standards are for protecting access to credit card data. And whether you're a city, county, or a salon or a tanning place, that we're going to apply it.
So is there, the PCI restrictions, does it have to do both authentication pieces before it sends it out to the server versus a lot of the other CJIS ones, it can go out to the server, get authentication, and prompt for the second?
PCI is going to require you more two-factor authentication, real-time, and also to any system on which PCI is stored or processed. Where CJIS, you can do an MCIC check, download a record, you need advanced authentication there, but then I can email it out to everybody in the room, and none of you need to have advanced authentication. Don't expect that to be for long. And it's just one of the regime changes that just happened. And so, I forget the gentleman's name, I think it was Colonel Tatum up in New York. He was like the community saving grace and said, well, we have MDCs physically locked in our vehicles. Officers don't have keys, they can't take them out. Why do I need to have advanced authentication there? And everybody said, well, that makes a whole lot of sense. Let's send that up to the FBI and to the designated federal representative to see if that makes sense. And I said, sure, it makes sense. And so that, in looming, everybody needed to have advanced authentication everywhere, was lifted. He's left. Alan Peretti came in from Texas. He's in his late 60s. He just retired. Joe Dominic from California, different story. Has a focus on NIST. He has a focus on NIST 863 and 853. He's going to be there for a long time. He's in his 30s. And so I would expect things to change. Now, as things change, like let's say folks have SMS deployed, usually when the CJIS security policy deprecates something, you get 4 years. So, and you'll get advisory saying, hey, this is going out. If you have it, you're going to have some time, but you usually get a grandfather because it's an unfunded mandate. They're not going to say, well, you deployed RFID, we don't like RFID, you need to freak that out now. You're usually going to get about a 4-year window. If there's something new, so deprecate or taking away, if there's something new, you're generally going to get a 2-year window.
Yep.
Any other questions? I ran through all my questions. I saw the $20 bill here. So technology questions. What does PKI stand for? Raise your hand.
Public key infrastructure.
Very good. Thank you, everybody, for your time. I'll be here through lunch and leave afterwards. So, thanks.
Thank you. Our next speaker, we've talked to y'all all these new technologies, about these mandates. Now we have the person who's been waiting for. Actually, it's going to talk to us about how we're going to afford this stuff, or some funding sources that we can go to. So, Ashley, does anybody need a break, or should we just power through? Okay, we're powering through. Ashley,
All right. Oh boy, challenge is on us. Well, thanks. My name's Ashley. I'm from upstate New York. I work for a company called Grant's Office. It's my very first time in Colorado. I got here last night and it was dark, so I didn't see anything. And then I woke up this morning and it was foggy, so I still haven't seen anything. So I'm going to be one very excited person to go outside. Hopefully we get it up here today. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. John and I are going to split up the rest of the remaining time. Quickly for 2 reasons. One, and most importantly, grants and grant funding are really best, those conversations are really best had one-on-one with your specific agency. As you've been listening to all these speakers today, you've been internalizing it and thinking about how that best fits for your agency and how that will or will not work for your officers and for your team and staff. Grants are a very similar way. I can talk to you all day about grant funding out there for sexual assault and domestic violence and reducing such instances in your community. But if it's not a priority for your police chief, if it's not something that your officers engage with every day, it's just not going to be important for you. It's not going to be something that you just file away as white noise. So I'm going to talk quickly here today. 3 things we're going to talk about is, first and foremost, just taking a step back from the conversations we've been having today and looking at the bigger picture of the technology and seeing how that's going to fit into a grant application. I'll talk quickly about some grant programs that are out there that could fund this type of technology. And then finally, I want to talk about the Panasonic Grant Support Program, which is really the reason why I'm here today. John, Stewart, and the folks at Panasonic, they do provide grant support. So how your agency
provided or outside. So first and foremost, there's a whole slew of technology that can be funded by grants. Similar to Ted's conversation earlier with the CJI people being pretty technology neutral, grants are also very technology neutral. They are going to want to see that you're working on all of these pieces, that you've got your general policing equipment. That's what your officers are interacting with every day. That's what your residents are interacting with. You've got some advanced policing equipment that's going to be your more specialized incidents. Maybe your detectives are working on these things, command staff. These things are showing some cost reductions recently, so folks are turning their heads more and more towards these. And then you've got your support infrastructure. That's what a lot of you folks work with every day. We talked about having that cake behind this. Your officers aren't thinking about a lot of these things from time to time, which is why it's really great to have folks like you on the ground level for grants and for requesting technology in grants, because you may have a command staff that's really focused on this, but you say, well, hey, we actually need some pieces of this. It's great that you want some body-worn cameras. We definitely have the funding for that, but have you thought about storage? Have you thought about how our network will react for uploading? Those types of things. So it's really good to have you on the floor, on the ground floor for those conversations, in addition to your police chief or your commanders or your detectives. We can get the whole picture. We can make sure that all aspects of that technology are being funded, in addition to any other components, officer training, officer recruitment, community outreach, those types of practices as well. The reason why I said we need to take a step back in terms of grant funding for this technology is that the grant funders are really interested in the project that you're working on, not necessarily the product. So compliance is very important. Mobile applications are very important. The actual hardware for that mobility is very important. But the grant funder wants to know what you're going to do with it. How are you going to track opioid use in your community? How are you going to reduce instances of sexual assault and domestic violence? How are you going to improve your homeland security preparedness or your emergency preparedness with that unit? So the way we suggest to do that is you identify a specific crime or a specific incident in your community that's going to allow you to host that project, which is one of the reasons why I say it's really best to have these conversations one-on-one, so we can talk about some of those things that you as an agency are uniquely seeing in regard to your neighbors. And then finally, how is this technology going to bring additional benefits to this project? If you just start with, we need it, you miss a lot of things that the grant funder is going to be interested in. They want to know, what's your timeline? What types of officers is this project going to touch? How is this going to improve day-to-day operations in your facility? Not necessarily, we need new mobile data computers because the keyboards are falling off and it won't hold a charge, and there's a few cracked screens. The grant funder doesn't want to hear that. They want to know that you getting those new in-car computers is going to standardize your investigative procedures. That those new in-car computers are going to improve your CJIS compliance, or they're going to improve your dispatch. If you're moving to E911 or next generation 911, how is that computer going to connect into that? So just going to talk briefly about a few different funders. We worked quite a bit with Panasonic in the state of Colorado. The state of Colorado is actually one of my favorite states to work in with grants because we've got some great state-level funding. One of the most popular grants, if you have grants in your department or if you're kind of tangentially aware of them, JAG is probably the most common. The larger agencies are going to get a direct allocation each year. So Denver, Colorado Springs, Douglas County. You folks are already getting this money each and every year. Someone in your department knows about it. Someone in your department is applying to it each year. What we see is because you can rely on that money each and every year, folks start spending it on the same exact thing every year. Well, we use our JAG funds every year to buy bulletproof vests. That's great, but it takes someone to take a step back and say, well, we have a whole closet of bulletproof vests. Why don't we use it on a technology improvement program? Why don't we use it to improve our technology in our jail? that we can start using some of the dispatch features, because the county just spent a whole bunch of money on a new dispatch. If you are not one of those agencies, if you're one of the smaller folks here, you actually apply competitively to the state of Colorado each and every year. Another excellent Colorado state program is traffic records program. Essentially, CDOT, very similar to CJIS. You report traffic data to the state shares that information with the federal government. They want that information to be correct. They want it to be accurate, and they want it as soon as possible. So finding a project that improves some element of that system is what CDOT likes to fund. So if you happen to be an agency that's still doing pen and paper for tickets, for example, officer takes notes on the scene, has to return back to the office, type it into a computer, you're introducing error into the system. They can't read their notes, they lost a piece of paper, it takes them until the end of their shift, or maybe even until tomorrow to get back to the office. Those are the types of projects that this grant program wants to see finished or to solve. Pre-grade project, or pre-grade program does have a cost sharing requirement of 25%. But again, it's got an early spring deadline. And I'm from the East Coast, so if I talk too fast, please tell me. Quickly moving towards the federal grants, these grants are going to be more complicated. They're going to involve more moving pieces. They're going to involve more than just technology. They're going to have larger award sizes, but they're also going to have a larger application burden. The federal government's going to want to know more about what you did with that money. They're going to want to know, they're want more tracking details about those funds. So it's kind of a pro and a con, push and a shove. Depends on where your agency is in terms of grant funding. I'm going to talk about a couple of these grants here today, but I do want to call out the body-worn camera program down there at the bottom. It was a 3-year initiative put on by the Obama administration. They did set aside funding for 3 cycles of the grant program. The last cycle was just this spring, 2017. We are waiting on a budget. We're always waiting on a budget from Congress, but we're waiting on a budget to see if that program is going to come back again. This current administration is very law enforcement friendly. They're very friendly to putting technology into the hands of law enforcement. So we are expecting to see it again, but it's going to take an actual act of Congress to put some money back into that program. One of the ways that we can help your community connect the dots in ways that you may not think is through some of these programs like this, Improving Criminal Justice Responses Program. The actual full title is Improving Criminal Justice Responses to Sexual Assault, Domestic Violence, Stalking, and mouthful. Doesn't even have an acronym. No, it doesn't even have an acronym. This is all about reducing sexual assault and domestic violence in your community. That does not immediately, to me, scream aegis compliance or scream officer mobility. This program is all about breaking down silos between agencies, getting folks from law enforcement, courts, victim service providers, sitting at the same table, saying, how can we improve this process? How can we improve this process for those who have committed this crime? And how can we improve the process for those who have experienced this crime? So we see folks getting mobility, pieces of mobility so that they can sit out in their car. Officers know exactly what they're walking into. They can type information to the computer if they have a tablet. We've seen folks actually preload information onto those tablets, bring it into the scene after it's all been sorted out. So if there's a language barrier, you can have Spanish documents loaded onto the tablet so you can show folks information that they need to know. This also can be used to share with other agencies. So, if the court also needs to have some access to information, you don't have to collect it each and every time. This program can fund the hardware and software that allows that data to be shared. Another great pool of funding is from the Department of Homeland Security. Any folks here get funding from DHS? The city of Denver and the surrounding area is eligible for that UOSI grant fund. That's specifically for the city of Denver and the surrounding areas to improve their homeland security preparedness. Folks that are outside of that metropolitan area, you have access to the state homeland security grant, and also the emergency management performance grant. These grants are very, very generally written on purpose so that you can improve your cybersecurity, you can improve your physical security, you can do training. A whole bunch of things can be funded with homeland security grants, so that you can meet your agency. One thing that is interesting to know about homeland security dollars is you can see after 9/11 and after the American Recovery Act in 2008, 2009, there were a lot of programs. There was a lot of white noise in the homeland security space. There were tons of programs. Many of them had overlapping priority areas, overlapping funding areas, and over time, through the recession and all of that fun, we've seen these programs really level out. It is less money. You may talk to your command staff about homeland security dollars, and they'll say, oh, it wasn't what it used to be. No, but they are very consistent now. We have seen over the last 3 or 4 years, we've seen programs come out with the exact same amount of money, with the exact same priorities. So they're very predictable. So if it happens to be that your agency has some priorities for 2018 homeland security dollars, you say, okay, put us on the docket for 2019, because we know those programs are still going to be around. Another very big topic in the grant world today is your dispatch and also FirstNet. So how folks are calling into 911, how those officers are accessing that information, what's being sent over, can they receive videos, can they receive pictures from a 911 caller, and then also FirstNet. How are your officers getting access? Colorado is an opt-in state, which is great for FirstNet. Very quickly, and I apologize for the brevity, the Department of Commerce is hosting another grant program for your 911 dispatch center. So I know we had somebody here who said they were interested in starting a dispatch center. This funding is going to be funneled to the state of Colorado this winter. They get to apply for it. They'll receive it in the spring. And then it's up to the state to distribute those funds as they see fit. They have one of 3 options. They can pass through all of that money to the state and county dispatch centers. They can keep it all for themselves and improve state-level facilities, or they could do a hybrid of both. Most states, the last time this program came out in the early 2000s, did a hybrid. Some states did keep it all for themselves, and they had some pretty angry usage. So keep your ears out for this one. We haven't heard anything about what individual states are working on. That is something that they will start talking about or start announcing spring, summer 2018. And then FirstNet, FirstNet's great. We're really excited about it. I just thought FirstNet was going to be this mystery thing that was never going to happen for the several years that I've been working on grants. But it's actually happening. There's no grants out there for it just yet, but there are going to be some costs that your department has to take on to attach to FirstNet. So we will likely see some grants come out there for that program pretty soon. So, okay. If you want to hear me say this more slowly and with more detail, you can talk to John or any of the folks in the CJIS level team about the Panasonic Grant Support Program. Essentially, we have free services for your department, for you as an IT staff, for the command staff, for anyone interested in grants. There's one grant writer here, right? We can do funding research for you. So if you give us your project, you give us some details about your community, talk about the issues that you face as an IT staff, the issues you face as an department, and we can go out there and find grants that are specifically targeted to address those issues. Put them all together in a report, a summary of all those programs, so that we give you that report. So that you can look it over, you can share it with folks in your agency, and you know how to get the conversation started. The report has deadline information, who who's eligible, what your award sizes are going to be, and it also has links so that you want to go out to the main page, you want to go to the Department of Justice's website, you can link right out and see more information there. Once you have that report, you've shared it with your agency, get everybody sitting down, and we can hop on the phone with you and dive into that report. So if you were expecting to do something about CJIS compliance, and I gave you a grant about sexual assault and domestic violence, and you go, what? We can answer that. We can talk about it, we can weigh the pros and the cons of each program, lay out a timeline for you, and show you how to become grant ready. So that when that grant opens in February, you've got all your identification numbers, you've got a draft, all your paragraphs. All you need to do is spruce up the application. Speaking of the application, if you have a draft, we can look it over. We've got folks on our team who have written for these federal grants, but then they've also been reviewers of the federal grants. So they've read dozens of these proposals. They know what the funder's looking for, and it's even slow. So we're going to tell you to trim the fat in some areas, bulk it up in other areas, because we want to see you get funded. And then we also have, like I said, a team of grant writers. So if it's a large proposal and you don't think your agency can take it on, or if you, the staff member, are already wearing 15 hats and you can't take on a 15, we can actually write that proposal on your behalf. Again, all completely at no charge to you, because of your relationship to John. So if you want to learn more, there's a website here at the bottom. Panasonic's got a great website for this information. You can read previous white papers that have been written about this project. There's some guidance there on the Assisting to Firefighters grant. There was one fire department here today. We do a lot of activity with the AFG grant. And then there's also this tool right here. It's the information collection tool. This is how we get started. This is where you tell us who you are and what your technology needs are. You can fill that out, or work with any of the folks over here on how to fill that out, and then you send it to this website here, and we can get started. We can get the conversation started wherever you are, wherever your agency is. If you have a grant writer on staff, we're not here to take their job. We're not here to step on anybody's toes. Quite often we work side by side with those folks, just as an extra set of eyes. We try to keep our finger on the pulse of some of these grants. So if we see that the body worn camera grant opens, we'll ping you and say, hey, this grant's open, it's due on February 21st, let's get started. That way you don't wait a week or two not knowing that it's open, and then you're scrambling to get submitted on that. Here's my contact information, and this is contact information of Amy Lee. Amy Lee works for Panasonic, and she can also help you with all that information. Do you have any questions? Is it almost lunchtime? Again, I'm very sorry that I talked quickly, but please feel free to fill out one of those ICTs. We actually brought them. So if you want to fill it out the old paper way, we can scan it and make a PDF for you and get the conversation started. I also have some of my cards over there if you have any more questions.
Thank you, Ashley. Thank you. Actually, really just brief. Yes, we prefer the Panasonic line. Yes, we prefer you work with PCS Mobile, but you don't have to. So please take advantage of the fact that Ashley is here. You met her in person. There are, the forms in the places that you go with her on. So our last presenter is John Stewart. As in all good resellers, we have the shiny object we have to show you. And so, John.
Madeline Sawinski has left the conference.
Okay. So John is going to eat the first between you and lunch is coming. We're doing box lunches for y'all, and hope it works out. And John is going to present for the shiny new objects we have in Panasonic. So thanks for your attention, and so we'll keep this momentum going. And Lori, we started that form for you already. And so I have a document that I can pass on to you that basically lists a lot of the Colorado stuff for Douglas County. I'll get it to you. Yeah.
I fill out slides, but I'm gonna cut down because I'm between you and lunch. And, all I do is I'll make it, somewhat specific to today. I'm gonna focus a little bit on the multi-factor, because we have some unique features on the multi-factor, which would be relevant to today. And also the FirstNet, which was brought up today. We're also very, involved in FirstNet right now. Yes.
Passing the forms and the cards around.
There's obviously a nighttime movie, no light. So that was the video. Was it great? Thank you.
I like the ending.
So, real quick, those who aren't real familiar with Panasonic, we've been building computers for well over 20 years, and we build them ourselves. We don't outsource them to Chinese companies and so on. We make them ourselves, our own factories, our own employees, and we build them because you folks tell us what you like, what you don't like. One of the products I'm going to talk about today is the CX33, which took us 4 years to, come from, the beginning to birth. We spent a lot of time on it, and it was brought into it, and we had some setbacks just because we get different changes of customers' opinions and so on, so we came up with that. I'll go through the feature in a second. So our 7-port technology has not changed in 20 years. The father of Tupperware is still alive in Japan and still very involved in developing these products. So if you look at it, it's all relevant to what you folks do. You look at the high visibility and so on, it has to be bright, has to be clear, it has to work in the sunlight, it has to be able to dim down nighttime when it's bright. You want the officers to be lit up in the car and so on. Security, obviously, big thing today, security, right? So multi-factor, there's Kensington locks, ways of locking it, there's TPM, there's a lot of security methods that we always build into all of our devices. Our devices are enterprise grade, they're not consumer grade. We're not big like a Dell or like a HP or Lenovo. We're a smaller unit that is very specialized for enterprise grade products. Thermal management. Again, you know about that space, it's extremely cold. 20 below, 50 below, so on. I've had those territories in the past with Panasonic 10 years, and I've had North Dakota, I've had Alaska, and I've been to those areas when they've been that cold. And it takes a second for a computer to start up. And so we have heaters in our hard drive that's built in. Extreme heat, we have computers in Death Valley. And then it's funny because Alaska, I had it, Fairbanks is got the largest extreme temperature range in the world. The summertime, it could be 100 degrees in Fairbanks, Alaska. It could be 50 below in the wintertime. Huge delta between the 2 points. Our device is designed to work in that extreme heat, extreme cold. An iPad, for example, will shut off at 113 degrees, the consumer product. A Surface will shut off at 121 degrees. It's designed that way. It's protected. My Samsung phone, I'm not sure, it shuts off at probably 115 or so. The Toughbook is designed to go to much more extreme temperatures in summertime. Wireless, we were the first with wireless built into the devices, 4G, 3G. Back then, it wasn't any of those technologies. So we've been installing wireless for years. I mentioned we have a FirstNet roadmap. Probably about this time next year, we'll have our Band 14 capability. So you can do FirstNet today. It's just a prioritization right now, but The whole Fan 14 will be available. We'll have a push-to-talk capability in our handheld device for first ed. So we're, again, if you have more questions on that, we're working very closely with the team for first ed with AT&T as well. Lightweight, as you know, I mean, devices are 31s, our 30s, our 28s, our older devices. They're like Vietnam era. They're computers, you know. I've been in the company 10 years, and again, I've seen the workforce. Again, it's a younger workforce that is used to computers, and they're expecting lightweight computers, thinner, smaller. You know, so we see that as kind of a trend. And so we accomplished that with magnesium and other components to keep it light. Our products, as you see, like this 33, has thinned up a lot over the years compared to our 31 series. Long life battery, we're the longest, we're the biggest battery manufacturer in the world. The Tesla vehicles all have our batteries. We have a plant we built next to the Tesla plant, and then they chose us because of the quality of our batteries. They're the best in the world. So that's something we're core competency for us is battery life. Ruggedness, again, I think we've had a reputation of having a very extreme rugged product. That's when you think of top look, it's usually because it's rugged. That's not really, as I tell people, that's not a big thing. Anybody can go rugged. Anybody can make a rugged product, make a rugged case, make it drop resistant. And so when I get in a cop car, you're not going to drop a whole lot. I see more with EMTs than I do with cops. You know, EMTs are probably the roughest on the computers of any of our users, just because of the nature of their job. But what's unique about us is on the boards, on the motherboards, are how we build it. The components we use on those motherboards are 10 to 12,000 hour minimum life. And so again, it's likened to automotive grade that we use on our boards. Not a whole lot of people do that. Not a whole lot of our computers do that. So when you're looking at return on investment of the high heat capability, vibration, cold, all of that, and vibration is probably the hardest thing on a computer. Our components that go to those boards, that's where your cost is. Cost is not the regularization. Regularization is inexpensive. But choosing those expensive capacitors, resistors, they're at a higher grade. There's multiple grades of electronics. How we build it as an OE manufacturer, that's just kind of showing us what we do. The batteries we make, the motherboards we make, all the components on the motherboards, the LCDs, and of course then there's the OS and the modems and CPU, which we don't make, but we're very specific on who we do choose. And our competitors, it's just, again, this is more of a consumer-grade model. Nothing wrong with that. But that's what differentiates us. It's how we build a product. The key differentiators and what I want to show is what we do different. Pretty much all of our competitors will take an Intel design set and they'll make it verbatim to that design set, and that's fine. Because Intel said, this is the way to make a board based on this chipset. What we do is different. We modify it. We've been doing this for 20 years. We modify the board, their design, and we improve it. We improve the speed. We improve the consistency, like the stability from the heat and so on. We do a lot of improvements on that board, longer battery life. So we look at it as more of a use case that more of a mobile environment, a rugged environment. So that's where we change things up. So we take the Intel design and improve it, and we work block and stuff with Intel. If I'm talking fast, I'm just trying to get through real quick, sorry. So 33, there's no display quite like it. It's probably I believe at this point, the sharpest display in the market. It's a 12-inch, it's a 3:2 aspect ratio. Got a little camera, I was just looking at me, and I didn't break the screen, which is nice, it's fine. So I'll pass this around, so you haven't seen it and so on. So it's a QHD. I didn't know what QHD was until we started building this, but I mentioned it took us 4 years to build it. A lot of those technologies did not exist 4 years ago. We knew where we wanted to go. We knew the input from our customers, but it took us 4 years for the technologies to catch up to what we wanted. I mentioned about the antennas. We have one of 3 anechoic chambers of this size in the world. The carriers, the Verizon, the AT&Ts, and so on, they usually will come to us to do the FCC approvals and so on, the testing, because of that unique chamber we've got. Those chambers are usually about the size of your room closet. I've been there in Japan. It's big, it's weird, but it takes out all the noise and so on to tune the antenna perfectly, and that's what we do, these devices. So there's a lot, if you look as I pass around too, and here's the heavy keyboard. It's not real heavy, but there's a lot of ports on it, all newer ports. It's loaded, and you can order in a lot of different ways. We built this really neat so that, let's say for example, you've got a tablet application, you don't have to get a keyboard, just get the tablet. If you want laptop mode, you can do it. If you want to lock it down laptop mode, we've got a way, because we have some customers that don't want to come apart, so we're about that. The guys losing pieces and so on, so you can lock it out. There's ways to do that too. And multiple ways of installing the car. Again, lots of integrated ports on it. One feature, like for example, we're showing here for today, considerable smart card, contactless, and fingerprint. We've got something new coming next year. Again, probably about this time next year, we're already well away in development, and it's a technology that will officially be existing this month. So there's a FAP30 fingerprint reader we're going to be adding to it as an option next year. And so what that will allow you to do is you'll be able to do a quick ID. So the Avis type quick ID, you'll be able to do it off this device without having a secondary device, without having to bring someone into booking to do a quick ID. You'll be able to do that from the field as long as you have an agent, that software application, which you can also bundle with it to be able to do a lookup of a undocumented citizen or non-citizen, for that matter. Any questions so far? I got specs. We'll go through that aspect ratio. So if you're looking at it and you say, wow, that 12-inch looks different than other tablets out in the market, they're 12-inch. It is. Everything out in the market except for a Surface Pro 4, which we make that display for Microsoft, they're all 3:2 aspect ratio. All the competitors are a 16:9 or 16:10 aspect ratio. Rectangular shape. You can kind of see how it lays out. We chose to go with a 3:2 aspect ratio 12-inch because most of the CAD our customers are using need a vertical real estate. As calls are coming in, they want more vertical than horizontal. And the other thing you were concerned about was on the cars, police interceptor. You got your column shift, you got the airbags, everything about airbag safety, and again about room and clutter, FTOs, giving the max real estate you can for your guys in the office. So we went to the 3:2, which you can see it's kind of in between a 4:3, which is the old style, right, to the what you see 16:9, which is developed for video, watching videos on it. That's important. So you got on installs, just kind of re-emphasizing there's a lot of ways you can install it, multiple ways. I've got 4 or 5 states I manage, and you know I've seen a variety of installs. I've seen a lot of dash mounting on the product. I've seen people keep the keyboard, flip it around. I've seen people just with the tablet only. And I have some people doing laptop mode. So there's a lot of ways, and also there's backwards compatibility. So if you have a CS31 or older with the docking station, we also have a vehicle dock adapter, which will dock right into it. So you can reuse your existing dock. Yeah, that CS31 or CS28 or 29, 30. You know, that's it's going back 12, 14 years. So we can still be backwards compatible. That's unique. You don't see any of our competitors doing that. You can't have the backwards, thought process of how do we help our customers save money and so on. A couple of battery options. 20 hours if we go with the long life. It's about 10 hours to go with the standard battery. 2 of them are hot swappable. And that's the vehicle dock adapter that would go potentially in your older legacy Panasonic dock. And that's a light keyboard that can go on that. It's removable in the car, and that's standard keyboard that's passing around. Hand straps, desktop docks. So I mentioned, again, about how we build a product. That's what we've been able to do for years. And we've been actually getting closer to 1%, so we're between 1% and 2% is what we've been hovering. And what we've seen, I started 10 years ago, and those numbers, they were like 30%, 40% of all of our competitors. And I think what's happened is with the advent of solid-state technology, some newer extreme technology, it's helped those numbers come down. But those numbers there will never make it to that level until they change how they build boards and how they change their technology processes. To maintain that level, it's very difficult, very expensive to do. The reason why we do that, I get asked sometimes, well, gosh, I can buy 3 of these for one of those, type of situation. I can buy 10 consumers for one of these tough books, you just keep fixing them. But here's how I look at it. If one of your officers is having to respond to my house because my son's at home, and I'm not home, he's being attacked, and there's a call for an officer to come in, his computer's not working, he gets lost. I don't want technology, selfishly, in the hands of EMS, fire, police, whatnot, that's going to fail. It has a no 20% or higher failure rate coming to rescue my family. So that's how I look at the cost. The cost is what you guys do, mission critical, failure's not an option. It has to always be working. That's again, how we look at it, that your job has to always be going 24/7, 365 without failure. That's important to us. Service, 24/7, 365, U.S. based, and our average turnaround time is a day, day and a half from when it comes into our service center to when it goes out. We pay both ways next day here. We also have Tier 3 field engineers, which some of you have met, and phenomenal. Average tenure is probably about 20, 25 years for all these guys. They've been around for a long time. We have something new. We have I don't know if any of you have seen those pictures before. You've seen around the country. You're familiar with Protection Plus. Protection Plus is accidental damage. We have something new to it. It's Ultimate Care. So Ultimate Care, the difference with that is that if you break it 100 times in terms of like a major failure, like the display, like the motherboard, and so on, there's no questions asked. Our standard Protection Plus is one major failure per year. A major failure is a display or like a motherboard. The Ultimate Care, it's unlimited. So again, I'm not saying to tell your guys, break as many as you want, because that's a downtime for you, right? But Ultimate is not that expensive. It's a little bit of an adder. But if you're thinking, I want peace of mind, I don't have any expense or cost for 3, 4, 5 years, Ultimate Care would do it for you. Any questions? I feel like an auctioneer. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, John. That concludes our presentation. We have lunch for you. I would like to thank Douglas County for hosting us. This room is all courtesy of those guys. Thanks for taking time out of your day. We have lunch. All important lunch. Good box lunches, by the way. So myself, Greg, you're sitting around a little bit? Yeah. So you'll be around, Ashley? So we'll be around. Lunch is being served, and thank you again for coming. So. Okay, let's do security. Is there anything that we didn't cover that you'd like to bring up, or raise your hand like that, you know, in here? I think contact CCS Mobile would be a great password phrase. And so I'm going to petition